Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of order. This is the City Council regular session meeting, May 2nd, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01 PM. Just to mention to the public that there was no closed session meeting today. So roll call, please.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Voigt?
Here.
Councilmember Laura?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Here.
Mayor Martinez?
Here. Do we have any adjustments to the schedule, to the agenda? All right, seeing none, Councilmember Voigt, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we seeing no adjustments to the agenda requests, we will go to item C, public comment period. Do we have public comment today?
I have no written requests, but I can check with Rudy. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay. Seeing none, then we'll go to consent calendar, item D. Are there any items wish to be pulled by council?
Mayor, I think we need to pull D8.
D8, okay, requested to pull D8. All right, any other requests? Do we have any public comment on any consent items?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion for the remaining items.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve items D1 through D7 on the consent calendar.
I'll second. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes, so we pulled item D8, set time, date, and place for a special workshop to continue the discussion of the fiscal year 23-24 citywide annual budget. Would you like to have discussion on that?
No, I just knew we had to schedule that, so. I mean, you're recommending May 9th? Does that work for everyone?
May 9th at 5:30.
I'm good.
Youth Council starts at 4:30, so we can't start earlier.
Okay.
We're good? Everyone's fine? Okay, if everyone's fine, then I'll entertain a motion for that.
I'll move to approve item D8, setting the budget workshop for May 9th at 5:30.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Brings us to item E, the Youth Council report. We have no student reports tonight, but just reminding the council that next week will be the last meeting of the year. They'll be setting goals for next year and talking about adjusted bylaws. Adjusted bylaws so far, we've gone to extend their membership to July 31st instead of June 1st. That allows participation by the youth during the summer at some of our summer events, but our intention is not to have any formal meetings during the summer for them. All right, and with that, that'll take us to item F, public hearings. F1, public hearing fiscal year 23-24 to 25-26 short-range transit plan, first full draft. Staff report?
Is she doing it via Zoom?
Is she covering phones?
Hear the clock being down the hall. Hello there.
Apologies.
No problem.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. You have before you our draft of our short-range transit plan for fiscal year 24-25. This is our first full draft. So this is built upon Table 4, which you saw earlier this year. We brought it to you in March. It's about a $9.5 million budget. It's comprised of LTF funds, Measure A funds, state transit assistant funding, and low-carbon transportation operations and missions. That is a three-year dollar amount on the LC top money. So in the Table 4, you just saw a portion of that. So that's the only discrepancy between those two. We are talking about utilizing those LC top funds to offer discounted fares continuing this fiscal year and for this succeeding 2 years. That'll help offset our fee increase that we'll get to in just a moment and one of the planned operational changes. One of the things I wanted to point out is that we went back and we did a little bit of digging in regards to fiscal year 22 and why we didn't meet Farebox. I wanted to understand why. So we dug into that a little bit and staff was able to kind of point out some of the funding of the exempt routes. You can't utilize your Measure A funding to offset your Farebox. So we didn't meet Farebox, which was projected at a little over 8%. We hit just under 7% per the audit. So it's interesting. So when you exempt routes, you also have to exempt some of the funding that comes along with it. So that was helpful for me to go back and look at. I know we've talked before about long-term planning for transit and what that looks like now that our population is over 50,000. Confirmed with RCTC over the last couple weeks that we still don't have official notice, but they do plan on sending it soon. As opposed to the original idea they had of stair-stepping us into this 20% fare box, they actually said it's going to just be like a 5-year grace period. So we're gonna have a 5-year grace period to work up to that 20%. There are some ideas and some options for more of a blended rate, so maybe not necessarily 20% because we service some unincorporated areas that have lower populations, i.e. Cherry Valley, things like that. So we may be able to use GIS functionality to look at our routes and take their population into consideration and factor that in. Some areas may hurt us, some may actually help. So just preliminarily, staff thinks maybe we could end up around the 19% mark. So not quite 20, but, because I know that's always a question we have. So that's the blended rate. So the entire plan, I know it's a lot. We did meet with RCTC already with the first draft, and they had non-substantive changes back for us, nothing outrageous, other than increasing the size of some of the tables. I know they were hard for me to see. So they wanted to enlarge some of the tables and just wanted to, again, confirm our fare increase. Because again, that's, I think, 3 years in the making with the COA. It's been recommended, and it'll help offset our costs and hopefully help our fare box in the future. So with that, the highlights remain the same that I pointed out when we brought Table 4 forward. So we're going to increase advertising and promotions, increase community outreach, incorporate the fee increase our travel training, continue to clean and sanitize, and just try to make people feel comfortable on public transportation again. Adjust our commuter route to increase service to Redlands. Adjust some time points to better accommodate passenger needs and time performance. Adjust Route 7, which will help our student population. Adjust the Casino Express to pick up the industrial area, and we are working with our industrial partners out there, the existing ones that are already there, and we hope to meet with the new ones that are opening soon to try to align those time points to where it's conducive to get their employees out there. We have a lot of traffic, obviously, at their peak start and stop time, so whatever we can do to help offset that, we will do. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the document, because I know it's a lot.
Okay, thank you for that. This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing up at 6:11 PM. Do we have public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have one caller on the line.
Okay, you can go ahead and send them through. Caller, can you hear us? Caller, can you hear us? Can you hear us, caller? Can you hear us? I'm going to disconnect and have Rudy call him back. Rudy, could you call back the caller, please?
Of course.
Thank you. Caller, can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you, and good evening, City Council. This is Ron Roy, and I'm calling about the regional bus service that can improve regional service in the Pass area. And I was hoping that the council would look into and have the transit agency look into some private entities like FlixBus. I've been fighting these battles for a long time, and Sunline just had not delivered, neither has RTA, but FlixBus looks like a very interesting alternative where they contract out with a private, with a public bus company. So, for example, they could contract with Beaumont Transit, and the transit agency would service the buses. They have a very affordable regional transit from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. Right now, they meet in San Bernardino, but their rates are really affordable, between $5 and $20 one way, and they're fast. You know, they do nothing but freeways. You can get from San Bernardino to downtown LA in like sometimes as little as an hour, which is unheard of. So please look into FlixBus. Also, if you please look at Amtrak Thruway, and I think we could very much get a stop in the Pass area. And frankly, I just think it's an option we need to consider, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
right, thank you for your comment. Any other?
Rudy, do we have any other callers on the line?
I have no other callers on the line.
All right, seeing none, then I'll close public hearing at 6:15 PM and open it for council discussion and questions. Mr. Laura?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a few things, Carrie. I really do like the idea of the expanded industrial route to help offset the Casino Express. One of the questions I have is that, do we currently require developers to construct bus stops in front of their warehouses or like at community centers in tract development?
Yes, we do.
Oh, perfect, okay. And then, okay. Okay. Under future marketing plans, are we allowed to advertise on our buses? And can we use that money to help offset any fare box shortages, or is that? okay.
Yes. So that's part of the advertising efforts next year. We've developed a preliminary advertising fee schedule that we'll be bringing back to you at a later date. And it would include advertisements at the bus shelters as well as potentially on the buses.
Okay, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Carrie, on, it's page 19 of the report, but it's 147 of the agenda packet. We're talking about key performance indicators, where it mentions there in the graph above, where it says system-wide passengers. Obviously, we saw a huge dip with COVID. My main question with that is, the ridership that's increasing and coming back, is that similar to what RCTC sees, maybe kind of region-wide? Is that a similar growth pattern and coming back? And just wanted to see if we are close to that. Is that an anomaly for us? And just checking overall.
Those that transport passengers are experiencing similar increases back to their ridership.
Okay.
So very similar.
Yeah, COVID kind of changed the way
It
we do
did,
business,
it did.
so, okay.
Changed it for everybody. But yeah, I think everybody else is on the same recovery path. We all compare percents and we're very similar in how much ridership we've reestablished. Some of the agencies were actually higher than some we've talked to, but because we're approaching about 50%, overall, I think 44 ridership back. So just depends.
Okay, and then
Close.
guesstimating what was in fiscal year 16, 17, was that on a path of continuing it, increased passengers?
It was.
Up to that point and then hit the peak
Absolutely.
and then COVID hit?
Correct.
Right? Okay, all right. So I'd imagine we'd slowly get back that direction.
That's the plan.
Okay,
That's the hope. Yes, sir.
all right, thank you.
Question for me. You said something about having our fare box ratio at around 7 or 8%, and then you're predicting 12.4. That increase is due to the increase in fare and our advertising effort, or is that solely?
Last year, we were predicting a little over 8%. This current year, we were predicting 8%. Next fiscal year, we're predicting over 12. We are losing one route that's exempt, which still all the revenue as well. So now we can count all that revenue, the Measure A funding that comes in, we can count that. So instead of having two exempt routes, we'll only have one next year. So that's part of the increase, and then the increase in ridership as well. And absolutely, the LC Top grant, the reduced fee waiver, because we can utilize that to offset our fare box as well. So that funding helps tremendously.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, seeing none, then I'll entertain, let's see, we are holding public and planning
Yeah, so you got one of the
with any
low ones.
recommendation changes. So we've already heard from council on some of the ideas. Do we have any other suggestions or comments before we move on? You're good? All right, looks like we're good. So we're motion to adopt? Okay. Anyone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to adopt the plan without any recommended changes.
I'll second.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt,
Yes.
Councilmember Laura,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn,
Yes,
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. All right, takes us to action items G. G1 is the approval of the acquisition agreement for the Community Facilities District number 2016-3 Sundance and authorizing the issuance of its special tax bond series 2023.
Thank you,
Staff
Mayor.
report. Thank you.
You have your entire financing team here tonight, as well as on Zoom. Just as a reminder, the city formed this CFD 2016-3 back in February of 2017. And so the next step in this is the approval of the acquisition agreement. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael or Jennifer for a presentation on this district. We also have Jeff Chambers with TriPoint on Zoom. He was unable to be here in person, but he is on Zoom.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. It's a pleasure to be before you again. It's been a little while. The item before you tonight actually is two resolutions. Make sure I get this right here. First resolution is authorizing the issuance of bonds. So we have a presentation to cover much of that discussion. Then also as part of this item is, as the city manager pointed out, is approving the acquisition agreement, which is, they're commonly done together. So we have a presentation similar to the format that's been presented to the council before. So you should see, for those of you that have seen this before, some familiarity. For those of you that have not, feel free to stop me anytime and ask any questions that you may have. Three sections we're going to cover tonight. The financing overview I will cover. The SEC compliance items subject to council approval, Mr. Forbath will cover as your bond counsel. And then with us tonight is Tom Jacob. He functions as the city's underwriter and will walk us through the details and the schedule. So my job will be to take you through the financing overview. I am Michael Bush. I've been the city's financial advisor. It's been a while now, 8 years, I think. So what you have in front of you today, we're going to speak a little bit about this development project, and you might see some names kind of changing in or out. So first one is, this is a TriPoint project. You might be familiar with TriPoint. They were previously Pardee. This was the project where they actually changed their subsidiaries to TriPoint. Started with this one right here about 15 months ago or so. So you might see the two, Pardee and TriPoint, in this presentation, and that's why. As presented, the project is age restricted for 55 and older residents. It is part of your Sundance Master Plan community. Most of the project, as you can see here, has been built, with roughly 424 of the units already being conveyed to individual property owners, meaning they've taken title and ownership of the homes. 23 are completed and owned by the developer, which means they're in the process of being sold or under contract, and then there's still another 257 that are under construction or in lot condition, meaning they've got a ways to go to be fully developed. And this is as of the date of February 7th. So much of the information you have in here, we lock in at a certain date and time, so we can move everything forward to prepare all the documents. And the date chosen for the development activity for this presentation is February 7th. A little bit about the project and its location. We have two maps. This one may be a little more difficult to pinpoint its location. Obviously, it's bordering the city of Banning. You can see some of the streets which comprise of the project. More specifically, I think this picture does a little better job of that. So you can see where the project is located. You can clearly see where it's under construction and development with the graded area versus the rest that's been built in. And again, part of your larger Sundance community. Give you a little bit of the overview before I turn this over to Mr. Forbath, and then I'll be available as part of the group to answer any questions as we go forward. In front of you tonight is several documents which relate to the issuance of bonds related to the CFD. This is a not-to-exceed issue total amount of $22 million, which was approved at the time of formation, which your city manager pointed out was, I think, February of 2017. Today, what you're being asked to consider is the issuance of bonds of just over 9 million of that, leaving a balance of $12,950,000, which will come back at a later date when they have additional facilities built and more units conveyed to property owners. Like all of the previous CFDs, this will be structured to assume a coverage level to assume there's coverage for debt service payments. So that coverage is 110% of their annual obligation from 561 developed parcels within the development. The bond proceeds, subject to your settlement agreement with Pardee, which Mr. Forbath will go through in the next section of the presentation, include developer reimbursement for impact fees and eligible public infrastructure improvements. Those public structure improvements specifically will be owned by the city as conditioned requirement to issue CFD bonds. This is all, again, subject to a settlement agreement that was reached many years ago, which Mr. Forbath was a participant of the negotiations and can provide any detail questions that you may have. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Forbath, and he will take us from this point.
Good evening, council members, Mayor. Councilmember White, I'm glad to see your shoulder's doing a little better. Mine's recovered from the last time I was here. My doctor essentially just told me I had to toughen up, but that's fine.
Well, I'm still able to write a lot of notes for you.
Good. I would expect you were. So, how did we get here? Why are we here tonight? I mean, some of you, this probably predates many of you on the council, but back in 2016 timeframe, 2015, 2016 timeframe, there was an ongoing dispute with Pardee Homes at that point in time, where Pardee Homes, pursuant to the development agreement they'd entered into for Sundance and Tournament Hills, had built a lot of homes in the city of Beaumont in various improvement areas. And for a variety of reasons, due to the events that were transpiring with the city at that time, and maybe for other reasons, the city hadn't issued any bonds on behalf of any of Pardee's CFDs in or improvement areas in a couple years, had not remitted any of the special taxes that were collected from those improvement areas to Pardee in connection with their developments. And so there was a dispute between Pardee and the city, and it never got to litigation, but there were letters and claims going back and forth. And so at that point in time, the city and Pardee entered into a settlement agreement that related to the Sundance and Tournament Hills development agreements, which required the city, to form certain CFDs and finance facilities on behalf of Pardee. That settlement agreement resolved those disputes, and pursuant to that settlement agreement, the city agreed to form CFD 2016-2, which was part of Sundance, and 16-3, which is sort of the last piece of Sundance in the city. 16-2 is issued and sold bonds. It's been done. But this is sort of the last remaining piece of the Sundance development within the city. And pursuant to that settlement agreement, the city agreed to this. What we agreed to was essentially that the city would issue bonds for these improvement areas that the city had been delayed in issuing bonds for. And in connection with the financing of development impact fees, Pardee agreed to front certain development impact fees and to pay directly for facilities that were identified by the city that the city wanted at that point in time. And so the agreement was entered into, and I defer to the city staff, but I think it's sort of worked and functioned to date. But now we're sort of at the very end of it. We're at the last pieces of it. This is essentially the last CFD, and there's improvement area 17D as in David, which I think is the last piece of Tournament Hills that hasn't been issued for. And so before you tonight, which is, we haven't traditionally financed fees for any of our new developments, but here this was part of the deal that the city agreed to with Pardee, was to essentially finance fees for them and reimburse them. So the fees there's fees and facilities that are be financed, and the city will be required to identify and spend those fees on public improvements within the city in accordance with the DIF program. And so moving on to next page. And stop me if anybody wants any questions about that, or we can go back after we're done with the presentation. But, you know, in connection with the SEC settlement that the city's entered into, you know, staff and council, we've taken great pains to make sure that we followed and complied with the cease and desist order and the adopted goals and policies that the city has in connection with CFD funding. That included, you know, training. You know, we were here, what was it, a month ago or so. I mean, to go over and do training to the council, and staff has received training. The official statement's been reviewed by the financing team. We had a due diligence meeting and a page turn pursuant to which we went through it all, where the city's going to receive representations from Pardee and others about the adequacy and accuracy of the information in the official statement. And so, in our view, the city has, complied or is in compliance with the disclosure policies in connection with this offering. And then, so the actions here before you tonight, as Mr. Bush mentioned, there's two actions here. There's an acquisition agreement, which is a three-party agreement between the city, the Community Facilities District, and TriPoint, pursuant to which the city agrees to acquire facilities or reimburse essentially the developer for fees that they've already been paid. And so because that agreement's between two different public agencies, that's why there's two resolutions here before you tonight. One resolution simply is of the city to approve the acquisition agreement, and there's another resolution of the Community Facilities District which authorizes the issuance of the bonds, the approval of a variety of these documents that are listed here this evening, and then also the acquisition agreement. So approval of the two actions tonight, which you could either do, defer to the city attorney, but either as a single action or separate actions, however you want to do it, would be fine. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Jacobs, or I can answer questions, or we can answer questions at the end.
Mayor, if I could for just a minute, I just caught a typo on the recommended action in the second title of the resolution, so when it comes down to time, we can fix it.
Great, and thank you, Brian. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Tom Jacob. As was mentioned, I'm representing Stiefel, the proposed underwriter on the transaction. I'm going to be covering the last section, which just highlights some of the major financing statistics. So in this slide that you see here, and as covered in the staff report, that based on current market conditions, or I should say, market conditions as of April 17, which is when the presentation was put together, we're expecting about $9 million in par amount that will be issued for the CFD. The true interest cost, which is terminology, which basically means the average borrowing cost, is about a 5%. And both of these statistics will be based, or they'll be determined market conditions on the day we actually come to market. This will be a 30-year financing, so the final year that the bonds are outstanding will be 2053. As Mr. Bush mentioned a little bit earlier, bonds will be secured by special taxes, which will be levied on parcels, the developed parcels, 561 parcels within the CFD. And the special taxes will be levied to provide 1.1 times coverage on the annual payments of the bonds. It's a very standard security feature for CFD financings. And last but certainly not least, is that these will be level payments over time. In other words, there will be no escalation of the annual debt service on the bonds, nor the special tax for the next 30 years. Just a little bit of information on the estimated cost of issuance. In total, we are projecting not to exceed of $310,000 for the issuance costs surrounding the financing. These are baked into the financing, so these will be netted out of proceeds of the financing. You can see here a breakdown of each one of the consultants that will be working on this transaction and their associated fees. I will note that these are in line with some of the a little bit more recent, within the last couple of years, of the city's CFD financings. We note 2 here that are roughly of similar size of the par amount issued and the total cost of issuance. And finally, we have the tentative schedule. So assuming council approves the 2 actions this evening, we are hoping to jump it into the market next week and price these bonds and then close or settle the bonds 2 weeks later. And so again, I think we still need to lock in the pricing date, but it will be the week, next week sometime, and then a couple of weeks later. And that wraps up the presentation. Appreciate your time this evening. And we're all happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you.
So let's see, where are we at this time? Let's go public comment first. So what do we have for that?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, with that, then we'll go to council discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Finn, start us off.
Yes, thank you. Question, if rates were to be lower in the future, do we have the ability to refinance this issuance? And, because I know the city has done that with some of them in the past. I mean, if rates stay above this amount, it wouldn't make any sense to do that. But
Yeah. So I'm happy to answer that one. So these bonds are typically structured with an optional call provision, which would give the city the ability to refinance in a period no sooner than 7 years. And so if interest rates, it's dependent on where interest rates will be in, at some point in the future after 7 years. I've had the pleasure of working with the city on a couple of refinancings over the past few years. And so we were able to take advantage of the ultra-low interest rate environment in 2020 and 2021 to save the residents some money. So assuming interest rates are favorable at that time, I'm sure the city would refinance the bonds.
okay. And then my last question is, are the homeowners paying this debt now in their property tax bill, or will it show up on their next billing?
The taxes are currently being levied
Okay.
on the tax bill, so
All
this
right,
won't
so
be
no-
a
no
new-
surprise to the
no
homeowner.
surprises.
Okay.
Yeah, and also just I will add that at some point when all the bonds are issued and assuming there's no additional facilities to be financed by the city, that the taxes will decrease slightly on all the property owners. So
Okay, all right, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Question? Councilmember White?
Yes, Mr. Forbath. The last council meeting that we discussed CFDs, I got some feedback from the community, and I shared some of that, I think, with you. And one question I'd like you to answer, because it's easier for you to answer than me trying to write an email.
Sure.
To address that. And the concern was that this person was under the assumption that you were the bond counsel for the developers, but you're the bond counsel for the city. So can you explain sort of what your duty is as the bond counsel for the city?
yeah, my client is the city of Beaumont. I work for the city of Beaumont, and I have attorney-client privilege and a fiduciary obligation to the city. I don't work for the developers in any which way at all. Never have. And our firm doesn't represent developers. We represent public agencies. And there's no conflict. We've never represented Tri-Point or Pardee Homes in any matter.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And many of these questions I know the answers
Yeah.
to, but I want to make sure we get all the information out in a way that we can, as a council, can understand, and anyone who takes a look at what we're doing, they understand as well. So this was originally, should have been part of 93-1, and it was going to be an improvement area of 93-1. So it was originally a development agreement that we were required to provide financing for what we're doing tonight, correct?
Correct. There's a development agreement that relates to all of Sundance, as I understand it. And so all of this property within Sundance, all these improvement areas were subject to that development agreement and included the requirement to form CFDs associated with it.
Okay, so we couldn't have stopped it as 93-1, but now it comes out as 16-3.
Yeah.
And as 16-3, it was part of a settlement agreement. Do you remember, because I don't, you might be able to help me, what the difference in the city's claims and Tri-Point Parties' claims? What were we facing as far as legal action that brought us to the table to settle?
So there's a couple things. I mean, as part of the settlement agreement also, which I forgot to mention in my presentation, was, you know, these CFDs annexed into the Public Safety Services CFD and also into the Services CFD, so they were able to contribute revenue to that. That was part of the settlement negotiations here, that they would contribute to pay their fair share. But you know, the claims against the city really related to the fact that underneath the development agreement, the developers claimed that there was an obligation to form these CFDs. The city formed these CFDs. They hadn't issued bonds, as the developers alleged that the city was required to do.
And these are for CFDs, not counting the 16-3 we're talking about.
Correct. Well, it was for all of the property. Yeah, yeah, all of this property. And I don't remember exactly, but I believe that there was requests to form improvement areas here for these CFDs, and they stalled or hadn't moved forward. So the settlement agreement was sort of a global resolution to all of Tri-Point's claim or parties' claims at that point in time. And out of the deal, I mean, the city received, you know, what its benefits for its bargain, and the fact that the city had a lot of infrastructure needs and requirements that to serve this development that because of the settlement agreement got maybe constructed sooner or faster than it might otherwise have done. I defer to the city to confirm that, but that was part of the negotiations, that there was these upfront requirements to fund infrastructure and fees in order to finance this. And then the other big piece of this was, you know, the city did get these improvement area, these new CFDs to provide police and fire services taxes that they weren't otherwise required to do. They weren't previously required to do.
So this one does, because I don't know that I saw that in your presentation, maybe I missed it, the public safety component.
I believe
is in
it
this?
does, yeah. It's not not pledged or anything. But it's part of what's being levied. Is that right, Elizabeth? Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
in the newer CFDs, we have one for the services,
Mhm.
and then the other one for public safety. And the public safety in our newer CFDs have an escalator to keep up with the rising cost of public safety.
Correct.
I didn't see that. These are all level payments, so there's no escalators in
Well,
this one at all?
There's no escalators on the service, on the facilities portion of it that is used to secure our bonds, but the public safety services taxes do escalate.
Okay.
And I think it's at the greater of CPI or 5%, I think, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And this was one of the first ones where we essentially got that out of the developer as part of these negotiations.
Right, and I think that set a precedent for us moving forward to
Correct.
make sure that all the CFDs had the public safety
Correct.
component there. So let's talk about the comment, or the fact that this is the first of only two issuances of bonds?
Yeah, so I think if you saw the picture here, let me go back. You know, the property's about, I'd call it 75% developed here at this point in time. And so, you know, the idea would be that sometime in the future, when this reaches just about full development, Tri-Point will come back with another request to issue the remaining authorization. I think the remaining authorization that we have is probably larger than what will end up being issued. It'll probably be closer to the $6 million or $7 million range of what sort of will be available based on the homes to be built still. So they would come back with a second issue or second request.
So you're saying the second issuance would be smaller than what we're considering
Correct.
tonight?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
So, we are authorized 22 million.
Yeah.
You're asking, or we're asking to approve issuance of 9 million, and maybe there's another 6 million that comes back the
Yeah.
second time
Yeah.
around. And then, Mr. Finn brought up the question about the homeowners have already been paying a CFD tax.
Correct.
Based on what number? I mean,
The-
how do you figure that number out?
So the way this works is it's not necessarily based on the bonds that are issued from the get-go, because what happens is once a building permit is issued, the property owners are gonna get levied based on their maximum or their assigned special tax. And that is a fixed amount. I can't remember, this one escalates. Tom, do you remember? Yeah, this one's a flat tax.
Okay.
So it stays stable, and so all the property owners will be levied at that amount.
Is that amount based on the 22 million that we approved the issuance?
No, it's just based on a flat number that was approved by Tri-Point and the city council when the CFD was formed. And so
Okay.
what will happen though is when I talk about we're only gonna issue roughly $16 or $17 million of bonds, that assumes that all, 900 something units are built. And, assumes all those units are built and, taxed at the assigned rate, the maximum rate.
And maximum rate is based on the 2% or something like
Yeah,
that?
it was what was approved at the time the bonds were issued. I can get you that amount. It's in the official statement. It's roughly, so for a home that is under 14, roughly 1,400 square feet, it's 1,366 per dwelling unit. And for the largest homes that are over 2,500 square feet, it's roughly $2,058 per dwelling unit.
Okay. And so when the second issuance comes through and we now know what the total debt service is, that's when their payments will most likely be adjusted down?
Down slightly. I wouldn't oversell, but they'll be, because right now our bonds are sized at 110% of, we have to have coverage. And so once we've actually sort of once all the bonds have been issued, we don't need to levy for the coverage. We just levy for what's necessary for debt service and what's assumed for delinquencies.
And you said tonight that, I think the other gentleman mentioned that it's a 7% or 7 year when Mr. Finn asked when it could be possibly we could optional call.
Yes.
Is 7 years. Haven't they normally been 10 years in the past?
You know,
Is this new?
some of them have been, it sort of depends on market, and Mr. Jacobs can talk about it further than us, but sometimes market is 10 years at par, so at par, or sometimes what's been happening is it's at 7 years at 100 at par plus a 3% premium. In year 8, it's a 2% premium. In year 9, 1% premium, and then year 10, it's at par.
So that's why you have in the past brought to us different options for refunding some of these, and I think we refunded most of them. There were a few that we said no to because the numbers just didn't make sense for the cost.
Yes.
One last question, just if you remember, because I don't remember. So the settlement was based on the other CFDs, the other 93-1 CFDs, but we had the opportunity to come to an agreement with Party Homes or Tri-Point doing this CFD, and that's when we negotiated some of the well, you referred to them as facilities paid up front? Or
Yeah.
do you remember, just so the public can remember what facilities that was? It was some of the,
I believe, in Mr. Pinckney, maybe you recall better than I, but I remember there was some improvements to Highland Springs Avenue, Oak Parkway rings a bell. There was some upfront monies that went to the construction of the sewer treatment plant. And those are the ones that I recall off the top of my head, but there was a settlement agreement that did have sort of some identifiable list of facilities. I apologize, but I just don't have that with me here this evening.
okay. And I one last question, sort of, it's related to Tri-Point Homes and the Sundance properties. I think it's more related to the properties on the other side of Highland Springs. But in the late nights that Mr. Laura and I sat with you and our council, going back and forth with WRCOG, I thought I remembered something about Tri-Point or Pardee having to put in a certain amount of investment into Oak Valley interchange before they got to a certain point of occupancy in, I think it was the Banning side of Highland Springs. Does that ring a bell for either you or Mr. Bush? Do you remember that?
No, what I do remember is, and what is true for sure, is out of part of all of this and part of the settlement agreement, we did get agreements through WRCOG. I forget what they're called. They're called TUMF credit agreements, where Pardee did front some design costs to Oak Valley Parkway Jennifer, maybe you help me on this.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah.
Cherry Valley and
And Cherry
Highland
Valley,
Springs.
Highland Springs.
Yeah.
And so we were able to enter into agreements with WRCOG, or it was between the city and party at that time that WRCOG blessed, that allowed the city to directly sort of capture TUMP here to be used for those projects. And that will be what we, probably with the second round of bonds here, and also from the Tournament Hills, CFD 17D, that when those bonds are issued, those improvements will likely go to those TUMP improvements. Party wanted to use some of these bond proceeds for this today and this bond issuance, but in order to issue the bonds on a tax exempt basis, we have to have a reasonable expectation the city's gonna spend that money in 3 years. And based on sort of where those projects are in the design of it and and the city's ability to spend it, it was uncertain today from sort of Stradling's view on the tax analysis that that the city could make those assurances that we could spend that money in 3 years. And so that's why I think those expenditures are going to be delayed until the next series of bonds and until the city can sort of finalize its plans for those improvements.
Okay, and Mr. Bush, do you remember the discussion about Oak Valley? Is there anything that you have to add to?
I just remember it being a dollar amount, but I don't remember a certain unit number off the top of my head.
But there was a condition that they would have to make an investment into
Yep.
Oak Valley
Yep.
to upgrade that interchange.
I do remember that.
And that was on some condition of the Pardee development on the east side of Highland Springs.
Yep, I'll look. I still have the
Okay.
file. I'll look through it and
Okay.
refresh
That-
my memory.
That's
of
all
it.
I had. Sorry
Okay.
for taking so long
Nope.
there.
Very informative, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Voight?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And thank you, Councilmember White, for all of that background information. It definitely helps me, and I'm sure it helps everybody else. I do have one question just about the refinancing, since I have never been a part of this, and just to kind of understand some of it. If we were to refinance, is there repayment penalties? Does it refinance at a 30-year, or what does it do the 23? How does that look for the homeowner?
So we would just refinance it so there's essentially savings in every year. So we would not extend the maturity of the deal, and we would only refinance it if to the extent it sort of fit the city's policies, which is at a minimum 3% sort of net present value savings. So we're not going to do the transaction just for the sake of doing the transaction. And I think in the past, the city's sort of looked at some and said, it's too small, it's not, let's wait. And so that whenever it was brought back to you all or a future council, the city's municipal advisors and the underwriters would sort of present, here's the savings analysis, and as part of the approval process of it, if that makes sense. Yeah, sure.
There's one thing I would like to add that is unique about this one. The prior refundings, one of the first priorities of the council was to refinance the transaction such that the escalators would be removed as a first priority, where this one's starting with the escalator removed. So there's a good benefit for that. So going forward, there may be a different view of the savings, just being a flat % savings goal this time. Usually before it was just get the escalator out was the first priority of the council. And then it was whatever after that would lower the tax rate additionally to that. So here, I think it just focused on interest rate savings.
Great, thank you.
All I have to ask is, what do we have left then for Tri-Point? We have the 17D that you mentioned, and then whatever's left here at the Sundance, and then that's the end of that. Okay, all right. Because at some point, I would like to know what we still have coming up that's still following the old rules from the old agreements. Or, of course, there won't be any more agreements here, but what else is out there? Because we had talked about at some point, and I think you brought it up, Mr. White, about policies going forward about changing the way we do things with bonding. So, at some point, we'd bring that back, not quite yet, but I'd like to entertain that at some point in the future. Okay. With that, then, we do have recommended actions here for the acquisition agreement and to levy the bond.
So, Mayor, I think you should treat these separately and vote on them separately just to keep the record clean, because in one, you're voting as the council to approve the acquisition agreement. In the other, it's the council acting as the legislative body of the CFD, authorizing issuance of special tax bonds not to exceed $10 million.
All right, thank you for that. So we'll see then on the recommended action where the and is, we'll separate the two. All right, so would someone like to make that motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the first motion. So I move that we waive the full reading and adopt by title only a resolution of the City Council, of the City of Beaumont, authorizing the execution and delivery of an acquisition agreement relating to the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District Number 2016-3 Sundance, and approving certain documents and taking certain other actions in connection therewith.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right, do I have a motion for the second part?
I can do it. I'll make a motion to waive the full reading and adopt by title only a resolution of the City Council, City of Beaumont, acting as the legislative body of the City of Beaumont Community Facilities District Number 2016-3 Sundance, authorizing the issuance of its 2023 special tax bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $10 million, and approving certain documents and taking certain other actions in connection therewith.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right, thank you for joining us today, giving us all that information. We appreciate it. All right, takes us to item G2, the sponsorship of the 2023 Cherry Festival.
Thank you, Mayor. So every year, the City of Beaumont hosts a Cherry Festival event for the first 4 full days in June, the first weekend. This year, it's June 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. In previous months, City Council discussed sponsorship. It is included in your adopted fiscal year 22-23 budget. It's a line item at $100,000. Tonight, we are considering that sponsorship in addition to reviewing in part the audit that City Council had requested the Cherry Festival Association perform. City Council also agreed to pay 75% of that previously. We have not received an invoice yet, so we do not know what that is. And then lastly, there is a request from the Cherry Festival Association to once again consider renting a stage in the amount of $10,000, and that was originated when the city demolished the pavilion. So that was in agreement in years past. It is not a line item in the budget, and so that would come from, the $10,000 would come from some cost savings in the recreation budget. And so there's 3 things that I would like you to consider tonight, and that's allocating the $100,000 that's already in the budget, approving the payment of a portable stage, and then authorizing the city manager to approve the invoice when it is presented, 75% of that invoice. And the Cherry Festival is represented here. Dan is the president, and he is here tonight if council has any questions.
Appreciate that. We'll open it up to public comments.
Did you want to speak?
Oh, no. Oh, they were written. All right, well, let's ask first of all, public comment. Do we have anyone on the line or anyone written?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no one on the line.
Okay, I'll open it up at 6:59 if you'd like to say a few words.
No, I want to thank the mayor, council members, as far as the city of Beaumont for the support for the Cherry Festival Association. And that's
all right. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. So I'll close it at 6:59 p.m. and we'll open it for discussion. It's like Councilmember White, do you have something?
Yeah, I did want to ask you a question. The audit looks pretty good. I'm impressed since you have not been through the audit process before. I just wanted to get some feedback from you about that. Was that a difficult challenge to go through? Was it something that, did it help you with what you learned from it?
I haven't been really involved with the audit that much. I just took over as being the president for the association, so this is pretty new.
Okay.
And this is, I believe, the first audit that we've conducted. Currently, I have a sample version audit, so I'm working with Laura to get the final audit.
Okay, yeah, we're looking at a draft version too.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the one that you're talking about.
We have processes we're trying to put in place to make sure that everything is more automated, let's say.
Yeah, we remember when we had our first real, truthful, honest audit. And it was quite a challenge because
Yes.
the audits before had not been complete.
And I would, we're gonna recommend that we do this more often, obviously. This is something that we need to make sure that we keep current with going forward.
I'm sure it helps you with your tax
Absolutely,
tax
100%.
reporting as well, so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Mayor.
Well, I do want to thank you for that audit. I think it's a great learning experience, and it's going to be, for the public, it shows transparency, and your positive commitment to that is well appreciated, so we thank you for that. I know for council in the future, anytime we ask for money of that significance, I'll always ask for an audit to be attached to that, so that's just my request, and hopefully that'll be a part of your agenda as well, or attention at least. And then maybe in the future, once we get it done, maybe every other year or something where you see fit.
Of course, yeah.
You bet. So,
Absolutely.
appreciate that. All right, so if we have one more.
I had one more quick question.
Sure.
Are we still planning on trying to move the Cherry Festival to the Noble Creek Park next year?
That would be next year, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we've already went down, we've kind of took a little tour, and we have some ideas, so we're gonna have a field trip, so to speak, after this festival is done, and try to do a layout that we could present and kind of figure out the layout for next year.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Cherry Festival, thank you for everything.
We appreciate it. All right, so with that then, comments from staff? Oh, we're good. All right, so I'll entertain a motion. We have 3 requests here. If not, I'll go ahead and make the motion. I'll approve, to approve the sponsorship of the 2023 Beaumont Cherry Festival and allocate $100,000 from the Recreation Programs account number 100-1550-7040-0000, and approve the payment for the portable stage for the amount of $10,000 from 100-1550-7040-0000, and authorize the city manager to approve the payment of up to 75% of the total amount for the services for the audit from 100-1200-7900-000 once the invoice is received.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes, congratulations. We look forward to part, always, you bet.
We hope to see all of you in the beer garden.
Great. All right, that's great news. With that, that brings us to G3, the approval of a Public Works Agreement with Smart City Electric Group for Fire Station 66 electrical upgrades in the amount not to exceed $63,045.20 from Capital Improvement Project CIP number PS-03. Staff report, Mr. Story. Hello.
Yes. Mayor and council, tonight in this.
Excuse me, Mayor, may I jump in real quick?
Yes.
If there's no objections from the rest of the council, I'd like to make a motion to approve this. Okay, so I'll move to approve the purchase order for Smart City Electric Group in the amount of $69,345.20 and authorize the mayor to execute the Public Works Agreement for services for Fire Station 66 electrical upgrades for CIP number PS-03.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, just pending any public comment.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
No callers? All right, thank you. Then roll call.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right, that brings us to G4, to approve a purchase order for RDO Equipment Company for the purchase of a John Deere skip loader in the amount of $151,657.09. Okay, so staff report, please, Mr. Story.
I'm gonna give it, okay. I am, in our efforts to continue to provide maintenance services for the 18 parks that the city maintains and the 20 miles of right-of-way streets that we do. A lot of the things that we're finding right now is that there's large projects and large pickups that we have to do, whether it be limbs, branches, bushes, and this piece of equipment is something that we're currently renting on a regular basis. And through a co-op purchase agreement, we've had an opportunity to purchase one ourselves, and so we budgeted for it. This is something that we rolled over from a previous budget because they weren't available at a time, and they've become available again, and our money is ready to be spent. And this is something that our department over the last probably 16 months has consistently rented this piece of equipment. So we think it's time to purchase it and be a little more fiscally responsible.
Great, thank you for that. Do we have public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, thank you for that. I was amazed we didn't have one. I didn't know we were renting it. So great decision going forward on this. And I like the idea that you had the extended warranty in there. I think that was a great idea. All right, Mr. Laura?
Oh, I was just ready to make a motion,
All
Mayor,
right,
in
we'll
case
take
anybody had any questions, though.
No, it doesn't look
No?
good.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to
You did
approve the
already.
purchase order for the RDO Equipment Company for the purchase of a skip loader in the amount of $151,657.09.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt,
Yes.
Councilmember Laura,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Right, brings us to item G5, the discussion and update on the purchase of a Spartan 105-foot Quint aerial apparatus ladder truck for Fire Station 106 Capital Improvement Project, number PS 05. Staff report?
Good evening again. City Council previously programmed $1.4 million for the purchase of a fire truck in fiscal year 22-23 budget. Moving forward, it was determined that based on quotes that were coming in, CAL FIRE notified us that that was not enough money to purchase the fire truck. And so sometime around October, November, City Council discussed this again, and another $400,000 was programmed out of the general fund as part of the midterm budget discussions, not mid-year, but it was like our first quarter budget discussions. And so that brought the total to 1.8. I did issue a letter to Chief Weiser authorizing the CAL FIRE and the county purchase the ladder truck. And sometime subsequently thereafter, we were notified that the 1.8 was not enough money, that costs had gone up. And Chief Hopkins is here to explain in detail how that process worked. And so we're back in front of City Council to discuss moving forward on whether or not City Council wants to authorize another $690,000 to complete that purchase or direct staff elsewhere. And so Chief Hopkins and I are here to answer any questions from council.
All right, thank you. Public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, with that, I'll bring it open for council discussion. Anybody want to start off? Nobody wants to start off. Okay,
Go ahead.
Okay, Councilmember Laura, if you'd like to.
Good, all right, thank you, Mayor. Chief, thanks so much for being here, appreciate that. And I understand this is probably this is coming back to us again because of more of a county issue, than it's not a CAL FIRE issue, correct?
Can you hear me? So CAL FIRE doesn't actually own ladder trucks. CAL FIRE, the only thing that the city deals with CAL FIRE is for the personnel costs. Riverside County is the agency that's used to spec out equipment or apparatus such as the engines and the aerial ladder trucks. So it was a county decision was made not to purchase the previous truck. that we thought we were gonna purchase after some inspections.
So the county got us a price for the additional 400,000 to go up to the 1.8 based on they're working with a company that they had worked with in the past.
No,
This is a brand-new company?
yes.
And so, once you came back to us with the additional request, the county decided to change, not go with that company and go with a different company, and the city gets stuck with the additional 690,000, correct?
Correct. Not only Beaumont, but the county's also purchasing one of the, an identical truck, and they're also having to pay that extra cost for the truck that they're purchasing.
So, and I'm trying to figure out, so that, I see that it's $2,259,521. We authorized 1.8 million, which unless I did something wrong, is $459,521 difference. How do we get to the 690,000?
That's putting a 10% contingency in. That's normal business when you're purchasing apparatus.
The contingency is 10% at 226,000. And so we're rounding up to the 690.
Okay. And is there anything that prevents the city from going after, if once we get the specifications, going after and looking to purchase the truck for the use of CAL FIRE?
There's nothing that prohibits the city from doing that. That's, in fact, what you did with Squad 66. Squad 66 has been purchased by the city. It's on a direct bill. So it does not have any of the fleet support costs that's in the Exhibit A, as the engine does. What will happen, though, is you will end up paying more for the truck because we get a discount for purchasing multiple trucks at the same time. So the discount's factored into that price for the county and also for the city on the purchase of the aerial apparatus. And I can explain why the decision was made not to move on with the previous purchase.
Sure, if you would, please.
So over the years, Riverside County Fire has either used for what's called the tiller or the tractor-drawn aerial trucks, like you observed on that council day. In the past, we've either bought through the manufacturer KME, or we have and then we went from KME and we started purchasing Schmiel or Spartan trucks. When COVID hit, many of the truck manufacturers started having problems with their building. Their manufacturers are laying off employees, shutting down factories, being bought out by other companies and grouped together. That has brought the industry down, from what I can count, to 7 companies that make the TDAs. There are other companies that make some type of truck, like when you observe Morongo's truck, the rear mount aerial ladder.
Right.
There are other trucks that do have a mid-mount aerial that is not a tractor-drawn aerial, so it also is limited to the maneuverability. Doesn't have the maneuverability that the TDAs have. So when the county went back to purchasing through KME again, as they were making purchases through KME, I believe they purchased 5 TDAs for different cities and for the county. One of the trucks, the TDAs, still has not been under construction and has had a PO. It was supposed to be built for over 2.5 years now, and they still haven't been building it. So the decision was made to start looking to go back to another company. So they first went back to Spartan and Schmiel again, and the price was high. It was back before COVID, you can buy one of these TDAs for about $1.4 million. After COVID, inflation, all the TDAs all the apparatus have skyrocketed upwards of over $2 million. So they started doing some other looking at, knowing that Schmiel Spartan was going to be over $2 million. They looked at another company. They found the company Rosenbauer. They acquired an estimate. They gave them the specs that we use for our trucks. Once We got the bid is where I came back to council for the increased amount of money. We then had the opportunity to go check out a brand-new TDA that Rosenbauer had built that was getting radios installed in the city of Paris. The mechanics, many of our chief officers went out, crawled around the truck, looked at the truck. There were some nice things about it, and there were some things that our mechanics found where the truck was not going to hold up to the type of use that we do, the type of equipment that we carry. They weren't happy with just certain ways that the truck was built. So they started communicating with and this was after I was told that we were going to go with this manufacturer. We got the approval, we asked for the money. We generated the letter to the county. About a week after we generated the letter to the county to make the purchase, I was told that they had been negotiating with Rosenbauer to make these corrections on the truck, that they wanted some welds reinforced, some other upgrades done to the truck to meet the standards. And once they met all those standards, it brought the price over what the cost of the Schmiel Spartan truck was going to be. So not ever using Rosenbauer before, they made the decision to not go with a company that we had not used. And they went back to a company that we've used in the past that already had our specs, that have built trucks for us and that we're still using today. In fact, the TDA that you saw do the obstacle course and throw the ladder against the building was one of the Schmiel Spartan TDAs. That one does not have a pump on it. So that's where the increased cost comes, is our fleet managers felt that we were going to run into problems down the road and we were going to pay a lot of money to repair the truck over time, and it wasn't going to last for the 10 to 15 years use that we get out of the trucks.
So, and my memory may be fuzzy, because when we did the touch-a-truck outside, which was really helpful, I thought we were talking, or I thought that I heard talk that we weren't going to need a pump on the truck.
No, we do, because that's, one, it's going to help with the ISO rating. One, we need a pump that's going to be out on the west side of the city to get to those houses. So if there's a fire, that's the whole reason of putting that station out there, was not only for the medical calls, but for the fire response. It's going to help with so having a truck and then also having another pump will help with the ISO rating for the city, which helps with the insurance cost. If I remind you, currently Beaumont, we are at a 4 for our ISO rating. We should have no problem getting up to a 3. And I hope in the future we might be able to get it down to a 2 after we're able to staff a truck, and because it takes into account, besides your water systems, your the amount of ladders that you have, if you have trucks, if you have pumps, the amount of personnel, and with the truck company, you also get increased in personnel.
Okay, and just a few more. Thank you so much, Chief. The 1.8 that we already have approved, because the concern that I have is our fiscal responsibility to the citizens, and the costs seem to keep escalating on a ladder truck that I think is a good idea. Is it possible to purchase a ladder truck for the 1.8? Even though it might not be the one with the tight quarters, maybe it was the one like the Morongo has, but it's still the ladder truck, 100-foot ladder truck?
You can purchase a truck for probably 1.8, but it'll either be used or it will probably not be a 100-foot ladder. It'll probably be more of a 75-foot ladder, which doesn't get us to what our goal is that we're trying to do, is be able to protect the assets of all the new logistics centers, the new medical centers, the hotels. Just because you have a 75-foot ladder doesn't mean you can climb a 75-foot building. Even with the 105-foot ladder, we're limited to about 6, maybe 7 stories that we can go in. You figure that's about 60 or 70 feet because of the angle that you have to climb.
So they don't make the 100-foot ladder trucks without the turning back, or I don't know what it's called. I
The rear
apologize.
mount aerials, they do, but they're still right around $2 million. I can tell you that a city close just purchased a used demo truck for over 1.9 million, and it's a demo truck. And here's where you run into the problems. So, and I'm gonna go back to your other question, because I didn't also answer that fully. You asked if the city can purchase their own truck and you could, but then you're also gonna be, responsible for all the costs of the truck, for the tires, the oil changes, anything that breaks on the truck, for mechanics to come out and inspect it, because it would be a direct bill, and then it wouldn't be part of the exhibit. So then you're responsible for all those costs. When, like, your engine is under, there's an engine use agreement, and in the Exhibit A, there's a fleet support. So the mechanics come out and fix that. You get a reserve engine under that if it breaks. It includes the tires, it includes the oil changes, it includes all that stuff. Unless there's a really large cost, which is written in the contract, where that falls back to the city, all the routine maintenance is picked up by the county. That's part of that money that you pay for the fleet support. And it's no different with the truck. So the tires on the truck, which are very expensive.
Right.
All those regular routine costs are gonna be absorbed by the county, it being, doing the specs and it being part of that program. So,
They wouldn't maintain the truck if we purchased the truck?
well, you are purchasing the truck regardless. I mean,
Well,
if
I
you
mean,
just
if
went
we
out and bought
purchased-
one, that would have to be a discussion with the fire chief. I can't speak for him, so I don't know. What you run into is we keep our equipment the same for a reason, and one, we have mechanics that work on them and know the ins and outs. It's also an operating issue. So if we have different types of trucks out there, they have different type of controls. They have different ways that the outriggers come out. They have different ways that if your compartments aren't configured right. So the thing with our truck versus some of the other cities, you can just go and buy a truck, but we make sure that our trucks are not overweighted, that they are, because we still have to, even though we're the fire department, we still have to obey the DOT regulations of the weight restrictions. So when they build our truck, they do a CAD drawing of the truck, of each compartment's measured. They will take, if it's a saw compartment, they will take the specs of that saw. It will fit into the compartment. They will have the weights of all that, so we know what the weights of the truck are. We know that everything fits when we get it, so things aren't just getting thrown in the compartment and rattling around. Each truck carries a specific type of equipment, so it doesn't matter if it's this truck, or if it's Moreno Valley's truck, or if it's Palm Desert's truck that's coming to an incident here. Our people know where the equipment is because the compartments are the same, the equipment's in the same place. It's not just the firefighters that are from Beaumont that work on that truck. We have people that work from the Blythe, from, the Arizona border, Temecula, Harupa Valley, that come and will work overtime and work on these trucks. So you can't have the same or different types of piece of equipment that you're not familiar with. That's how you end up having accidents or injuries. So that's why we are very particular. There's been hundreds and hundreds of hours that have been put into the specs of our trucks and why we build our trucks the way we do. One is just, they're built as a heavy use truck, not a light use, which is what the Rosenbauer was a light use truck. We build them as a heavy truck just because of how we use our trucks. Because we use them for rescues, we use them for fires, we use them for all sorts of things.
Okay, my last question for this is, does CAL FIRE have any automatic aid agreements with anybody?
We do. So we have an auto aid agreement with, there's many auto aid agreements throughout the county. So CAL FIRE doesn't have any. But CAL FIRE has auto aid agreements with other agencies like Forest Service and stuff. But Riverside County Fire Department has agreements. There's an auto aid agreement with Calamasa, and that is to provide one engine to them, or they provide one engine to us for only a wildland fire and only a structure fire, no medical. We also have an auto aid agreement with, excuse me, the Morongo Reservation. They have an engine, a truck, a brush engine, and they have an ambulance now. They will respond one of their pieces of equipment to an incident of a fire in the side of the city limits. However, the way the auto agreement is written is they do not get dispatched on the first alarm calls. One, they're too far away for it to be an auto aid for them to come into Beaumont right now, because we have the other stations that are around us, they'll fill with those engines first. So even in Banning, and it just happened again today, another fire at a hotel in Banning, the truck comes on the second alarm. It doesn't come on the first alarm. And even with the truck coming to here, the fire station for Morongo sits all the way at the back of the, along the hillside. So they have, at best, about a 19-minute response getting into the city with the truck.
So I thought what you're describing sounds like the mutual aid, not an auto aid. I thought that was, what is the difference between mutual aid and auto aid and responses?
So auto aid is that once there's a dispatch going, that we don't have to call them first and ask for permission to use them. So once we dispatch our resources and then it gets to, that they're the next resource, it'll automatically dispatch them without having to reach out, and get what we call duty chief approval for them to send that piece of equipment. Now, even during the auto aid agreement, the agency can refuse to send their piece of equipment. So if they have something going on say, the reservation, they might not want to send the truck out, or if it's on another call, or if they just don't want to. They don't have to send their piece of equipment.
Could Calamasa send, with the auto aid agreement with them, could they send their ladder truck?
They don't have a ladder truck.
I thought they just purchased a ladder truck.
They are purchasing a ladder truck.
So when they do have their ladder truck, they could send it here?
If it's written into the agreement, they could. It would be under mutual aid, and I'd rather not discuss that.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate it. That's all I have right now, Mayor.
Continuing, go, any preference? Okay.
All right, thank you. Question on the staff report, page 762 of the agenda. Second paragraph where it talks about the county's verbally agreed to pay for the additional 3 positions needed for the staff of the ladder truck. Chief, is that for just 1 year? Is that ongoing? And is there anything that we can do, or does that solidify the position a little bit more by purchasing the truck and putting it in good faith with the county, and so forth? I'd hate to, I see the need for the truck. I just don't want to get in a position where we get in over our head if we don't have the county support behind that. And so any comments on that?
Mayor Pro Tem, before the chief answers that, just before the meeting, I did receive a letter via email from Chief Weiser outlining a written confirmation that they would pay for 3 bodies, which the ladder truck requires 12, and we're only paying for 9 right now. So there's copies of the letter there that I'm passing out to you. I just want to note that it did come just before the meeting.
Oh, very good, okay.
Is there a duration for that?
It says ongoing.
Ongoing, okay.
Oh, super, okay. Question answered, thank you.
And just so you do know, they pay for for positions just like this on trucks like Moreno Valley, Menifee, Indio. So there's many other cities that they do the exact same thing, because the truck's still going to serve a part of the county area, so there is a benefit to the county.
All right, very good. Okay, good to know. Thank you. Appreciate the update.
Councilmember White?
Yeah, so let me start off with a little history. When we approved this in the budget back in June, it was tough for us to approve 1.4 million. And then when we came back in November and asked to approve another 400,000, there were a number of council members that were not going to. And so we had the Touch a Truck demo, and we saw the benefits of what you were proposing. So we went ahead with the 1.8. And so I have some serious concerns like Mr. Laura had. So I have some questions for you. You made the comment that you don't actually buy trucks, that the county purchases the trucks, correct?
What do you mean?
I mean, we pay
Like-
for it, but the county is the one who goes out and procures the trucks.
So, yeah, so the county, so we have an apparatus committee that goes out, makes our specs along, and that includes fleet managers, different mechanics, firefighters, captains, different ranks on what's needed to build the type of piece of equipment that we need.
Okay, so
And
the
then they
quote-
go out and then they secure that. yeah.
So the number that we were given for 1.8 million in November was a number that was calculated by the county.
That was obtained from the fleet manager, and then we got the letter from Rosenbauer.
Okay, but at that time, they were quoting a cost from Spartan, right? Or they'd already
That was
decided
from
they didn't want to go
Rosenbauer.
Spartan?
They had already talked to Spartan because that's who prior to KME, we were already using Spartan. So when they were having the issues with KME, because it was gonna be a KME originally.
Okay.
When we were having the problems with KME, what they didn't want to do is make a purchase of trucks when we've been sitting on one for over 2 years, waiting for a build that hadn't been started and was nearing the completion date and hadn't been started. And they weren't answering calls.
But
They
that was
weren't-
2 years it hadn't started.
Correct.
So
It's-
we didn't
I
know that,
believe
we didn't know that in November when you're recommending a.
That
us
was KME.
Okay.
That was KME, not
Okay.
Rosenbauer. So that's why the apparatus committee and the fleet went looking for a different truck manufacturer. They obtained prices from Schmiel and Spartan when, originally, because of the high price, because it was over the $2 million range, they looked at all the different trucks. They looked at Pierce, they looked at, Seagrave, they looked and got prices for all of them. One like the Pierce, I believe the Pierce was like 2.4 million or over 2.4 million.
But if you are getting prices on trucks where you haven't checked to see if it meets the standards of the county, how can we rely on those prices?
They give the standards to the companies. That's the hard thing with buying this apparatus is,
But I thought when you went and looked at the Rosenbauer, I mean, now, so the 1.8 was for the Rosenbauer, but when you went to look at the Rosenbauer, that it was determined at that point that it was not the standards that the county needed.
the Rosenbauer truck that was built wasn't built for our county. It was built for another county.
Okay.
But it was, besides, like different tiller boxes and some other things, some compartment reconfigurations and some other things, the construction of the truck, the way that the tractor-drawn aerial was constructed is what they weren't happy with. It was not durable enough. So
Was that
once-
before or after we approved the 1.8 million?
That was after.
Okay, that's where I'm getting at. The county
Yes.
made an estimate of 1.8 million without doing their due diligence that they eventually did, and that's why we're for a higher amount now.
I think they went and they tried to look at some other trucks. I believe they went and looked at, Rancho Cucamonga's truck. I believe they looked at, I can't remember the other city that they looked at that had a Rosenbauer truck. And they talked to some of their mechanics. They found out some problems. They thought they can work through those problems. It was when they got the new Rosenbauer truck that was sitting in front of their face and they started crawling underneath it, they figured it was not going to hold up. And then when they asked about correcting those problems that they saw as problems, the price started going up.
So have they looked under the truck of the one you want us to purchase for 220, for, what is it now, 2.2 million?
Yeah, because we already run those trucks. That was one of the trucks that was demonstrated here on the touch truck night. The one that did the maneuver through the parking lot and then through the ladder.
Right.
That was a Schmiel Spartan truck.
So
It's
is
just
Cal-
the only difference is that one did not have a pump. It has a big generator.
How much does a pump add to the cost of the truck?
How much does the pump add?
How much does a pump add to the cost of a truck?
I would have to look in the specs, but it's probably $4,000 to $10,000 somewhere in there. Probably
Okay.
$10,000 if I had to guess.
In Calamasa, do you know what they paid for their ladder truck?
It was over 1.9 million.
Is it a Quint?
It was over 1.9.
Is it a Quint? Or
It's
I'm
a-
sorry,
so
the
what it-
TDA?
No.
It's not a
called
TDA.
It's called a Suffens. And what that is it's not a rear mount aerial, it is a mid mount aerial, where the ladder spins in the middle. It has an extremely long.
The
overhang.
Calamasa truck you're talking about?
Correct. It has a very large overhang, off of past the back wheels. It's not very maneuverable. It's not, there are a few areas that do have them out on the West Coast. They seem to be more popular on, around East Coast. But I know from speaking with people that, it was not recommended.
But I thought that the demo that you presented us was that the middle platform was what we wanted to get, right?
We do, but that's because their truck does not have a person that sits in the back and steers that rear end. So what you have is essentially a semi truck, right?
Right.
You have a tractor, and then you have a fifth wheel hitch with a kingpin, and then you have a trailer. And on the trailer, you have a person on the back that sits there and can steer those wheels so it can kick the rear end around right or left and make those tight turns.
So I understand this is difficult for me to question you, because I understand your role in this is sort of a middleman at this point. It's more the county that is presenting these issues to us. One of my concerns is, I don't know when we stop talking about the pandemic, because that was into November of last year, that the pandemic is still, I mean, I would think this would have been priced at pandemic pricing when we saw it in November. I think also a cost of 1.8 million over the last 6 months of inflation that we're seeing is also going to burst that up. My first question, I think you answered it, but my first concern was the city manager sent a letter to the fire chief on November 16th indicating that we had approved the purchase, but it's 6 months now and the purchase was never made. So my question to you is, if we go another 600,000 on a truck, when will that price get locked in? In other words, when will the purchase be made in the next, 10, 15, 30 days? Or are we going to come back and say, well, now the cost is higher because it's still a pandemic story, or its cost is higher now because of inflation? So when can we lock in a price that we're being told that we're making a decision on, and that's going to be the price?
As soon as I have approval from council and the city manager gives me a letter to send to the county, then they will order the truck.
But keep in mind, if the direction tonight is to program the additional $690, we have to amend the capital improvement plan, and that requires a public hearing, and that would not be able to happen until May 16th.
And so we had, I think at one point, we as a council had decided that we could go, I mean, I think originally we were going to go with an engine, not a truck at Station 106. Wasn't that the original plan?
So, yes and no. That is something that I had been discussing with the previous city manager about. It needs to be a truck. I mean, you can put an engine there, and an engine doesn't really, it buys you anything. It buys you medical aids, and it buys you being able to put, stretch hose on the ground, but it's not going to protect any of your assets that you have, especially with your new logistics centers. I mean, just on one of the buildings over there, if we have solar panels catch on fire, that generates over $10 million a year in sales tax for the city. I can't get on the roof. There's nothing we can do to stop that. It'll burn that building down. Also, with the way the constructions are going along the city, your schools are now all have multi-story classrooms, so we can't get up to any of those classrooms if there's a fire in any of those classrooms. We just had a fire in Beaumont High School last Friday. We're at the size of the city, and besides me being the middleman and being the fire chief, I'm also a citizen here. So I know the importance of having the right piece of equipment in order to do the job. And I wouldn't push the truck so hard if it wasn't something I really truly believe that the city needs. At over 50,000 people, the amount of vehicles that go through here, the amount of heavy equipment that you have with all the semis, that's what the trucks companies are designed to do, is for those type of heavy rescues, for being able to get up onto those difficult rescues or put out fires on multi-level buildings.
I think you guys obviously sold us on the benefits of the truck that is now 2.3 million.
I'm sorry, I don't have control on the price.
I understand, but when does someone have control of the price? I mean, you had mentioned also that one of the benefits of purchasing with having the county make the purchases, that they have another truck that they want to purchase, and so you get a better price based on purchasing 2 trucks.
That price is for the purchase of 2 trucks. They've already ordered their truck.
Okay, so if we went outside and purchased a truck on our own, then they'd lose that discount on their 1 truck.
Probably, I would imagine, but they're gonna order more trucks.
Okay.
So the county's planning on ordering more
Okay.
trucks.
All right, well, I just, I'm frustrated by the time constraint. I'm frustrated by the fact that we didn't, I don't honestly believe that we were provided with a realistic price if it's now 600,000 more back in November. So those are my concerns. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Most of my questions were answered primarily due to the cost sharing with personnel, so I appreciate the letter for that. These county standards that you mentioned, so that's consistent, so everything that comes in meets those standards, and that's something you're consistent with, correct?
Correct.
And those standards are set up by your mechanics and so forth, your committee?
It's
however that works.
we have an apparatus committee, we have an equipment committee, so they spec all that equipment out of what we carry. If there's ever any changes, then they go through the process of making sure that it's gonna fit in the compartments, that the weight's not gonna overweight the vehicle. So they go through a big process.
And you would say then that makes it specialized then for our county? Because what I'm getting at is there's obviously other counties that are buying Rosenbergs and everybody out there, or whatever it's called, Rosenbauer. So what we're saying then is our county has its specs, and this is what we're looking for to meet our needs, and that didn't meet it, but this other one does. Whereas a Rosenbauer might be used somewhere else, perhaps because their specs or expectations are different.
Correct. It could be not only the specs of the compartment, because the Rosenbauer, they were gonna build it to our specs for the compartments, and that's widening compartments, shortening compartments, deepening compartments, putting in different trays. It's the use that we're gonna use it. So the type of areas that we take ours in, our road systems that we have here, the amount of miles that our trucks are driven per year, the amount of calls that ours runs. There's a lot of departments that have truck companies, and when they buy a truck company, it's not a standalone piece of equipment, or it's not just an engine and a truck. They have what they call light forces, or where they have multiple pieces of equipment at that station, so that not as many calls are maybe run on that piece of apparatus. So I still think we'll be good with the amount of calls that the truck should run out of this station for a lot of years. But it's more than just what the specifications are for the compartments and stuff. It's the actual use and driving and everything.
Okay. And going back to the maintenance, you'd mentioned an attachment or something, or I don't know what that.
Exhibit A?
What were you referring to on that?
Exhibit A. So your Exhibit A is part of the, on the contract. And,
Oh, okay.
And that
That's
explains all the support costs.
All right.
So the truck would be added into the fleet support costs.
Which
just
would
like-
give us the
like engine.
benefits of the ones currently and so forth.
And we were provided a draft Exhibit A with the letter for fiscal year 23-24. I have not had time to dive into it.
Okay.
And I did do a 6-month and a 12-month.
Okay.
Since the truck won't come on till December.
Well, so the concern I have is, we're put in a tough position because now, we have to look at price, but we also have to look at public safety. And I think Councilmember White had mentioned that I don't think there's any of us that realize that it's not what we're looking for to meet the needs that we have. The concern we have is the price and the way it got there. But unfortunately, I don't think that's a concern that matters at this point because we need it, and the more we wait, it's going up. I would like to address it more. I think at some point we need to talk, and we can talk, and city manager, and we can make sure that the next time we get a price quote, it's much more accurate to avoid something like this. So I don't know what happened, but that's a discussion for another time. At this point, you ask yourself, well, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna go back and get another truck? Are you gonna get a cheaper truck that you're gonna buy your own truck and lose out on I mean, we're really put in a position where we don't have much of a choice, and I don't like being put in that position, but ultimately the public safety is really what dictates my decision. And based on what I've seen at the school and what I see coming up, I don't see how we look at the public and say, we're not doing the best we can to protect our assets and our public safety. Unfortunately, we're put in a position where the money is again, that's another story for another time and how we got there and what happened. And it does need to be addressed, of course. But at this point, I don't see where, I think it's a moot matter, really. So my suggestion would be to go ahead and go forward with the purchase. I dare even say putting a little bit higher than that, just in case we do miss a deadline, because we're looking at May 13th, we're looking by the time you get it and put the letter in, I don't know how long that's gonna take, and the last thing I wanna do is have to come back here and do this all over again and have to adjust the CIP one more time for a third time. So I'm open for comments to hear what the direction is of our council. You had yours on first.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
You wanna go?
Yeah, it's fine. So I just noticed, I don't think I've seen this letter from November 3rd from Rosenbauer to Riverside County Fire Department. So that November 3rd was before we'd approved the 1.8 million, I believe. And the November 3rd one says that Rosenbauer's quoting us 1.9 million, 1.939. And then on the back page, in the third to last paragraph, it says, please note that as stated in our correspondence of October 30th, Rosenbauer has a scheduled price increase that will take effect for purchase orders received on or after December 1st, 2022. This increase will be 5 to 6% range, which means on a $2 million purchase, that's about another 100,000. That's where I start to go, what are you telling me and how much of it can I believe? So the question I have is there a letter like this from Spartan on what we're talking about tonight? Is there something from Spartan telling us, here's the price they're gonna charge, and then be careful because in a week after you approve this, price is gonna go up 5 to 6%.
I do have a letter from Spartan, what the price is, but I do also have, I'm trying to bring it, I can't open, of course.
Is that in our agenda package? It is not, I didn't see it in there, okay.
But and then we did receive the price going up for the next, I think it was 2 years after this year also, what the price increase would be. And it does go up, I believe it's a couple $100,000 each. I can look up.
When
what the
does that go
price
up?
is.
I mean, if we need to have a special meeting to get the order in under a deadline that's gonna save us $100,000, that'd be nice to know.
Well, that's why I asked about the CIP adjustment, so we have that kind of already hidden.
But if we don't, I mean, I don't know why we didn't see this when we're considering 1.8, because right up front on November 3rd, it was 1.9. And we approved 1.8. So I don't trust what the county's telling me now, at all.
And that's why I think we need to have another discussion about that process.
And in November, we were expecting a truck in November of 25. And now, if we approve this one, we're expecting a truck in
I think it's still
June of 26.
I believe it's 18 to 24 months still for the.
Okay.
But what I've been told is, I had discussions with, the fire chief about when the new station opens, about letting us use one of our light ladder trucks, our reserves, while we're waiting for the other truck to come.
What's a light ladder truck compared to what we're talking about
The
here?
light truck it's only a 75-foot ladder. It's a quaint, it looks more like a fire engine with a ladder on top. It's not the optimal thing. It gives us a little bit of ladder space, but, it gives us something while we're kind of almost a Band-Aid while we're waiting on the other truck to get here. Because
Okay.
we can't put one, we have reserved TDAs, but they don't have pumps on them, and that's where we run into the problem.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
If we think that we need to get this purchase order in right away, we're going to be here next week for a workshop. Can we have a special meeting that same evening and get it taken care of? Is it that dire of a need to get this going right away?
My understanding for the public hearing process for a capital improvement plan adjustment, it has to be at a regular meeting. It can't be at a special workshop, or can it?
Plus you have to do notice on that.
And we have to, you're right, we have to do a legal. We actually put a legal in for the 16th because the deadline was today. Depending on what council decides tonight, we can pull that legal from the newspaper. But in order to make their deadline for a Friday publish, we had to put it in
So
today.
no sooner than the 16th then? Okay.
And if I may, Mayor, I do want to add one other thing. In January, city staff partnered with Chief Hopkins' staff, and we did submit for a FEMA grant for the difference between what council had programmed at the 1.8 and what we needed. It was not the full 690, it was the 459,000. We have not heard back on that grant. Likely we won't hear until June, but I did want you to know that we did apply for a grant to get us to the finish line.
Councilmember Lar?
Yeah, I don't know. I've got concerns with the additional money, money that could be going to offset our wastewater fees. And, I mean, it sounds like we could still get a ladder truck. It may not be the 100-footer, but it's going to be more than what we have now, which is still going to provide safety coverage. In addition to that, we also have auto aid agreements with both Calamasa and Morongo. They both have ladder trucks, or Morongo has one, Calamasa will have one. So, and this, I don't know if this can buy us time to, we haven't talked about, and I understand that these large warehouses are going to be requiring us to have these ladder trucks, and I'm wondering why the city couldn't move forward with some type of an apparatus fee for two-story homes as well as commercial facilities that would require these ladder trucks. Give us an opportunity to purchase an additional truck at some point down the line. And I know that once we have the ladder truck out there in the new station, the ladder truck's going to be responding to medical calls, right? It'll be responding to anything and everything out there. It doesn't necessarily require a ladder truck. And you talked about the pumps, and I'm still not clear on that. I mean, obviously 10,000, when you're talking 2 million is really not going to be that big of a deal, so I'll just disregard that. But it still seems like the city has coverage. And if we bought a 75-foot ladder truck without the additional expenditure, we'd have that ladder truck plus potentially 2 others to provide support. And those are my last comments, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Mayor, may I answer Councilmember White's question? I just want to be clear on the chronology. The Rosenbauer letter that you have in front of you is dated November 3rd. Yes. The public hearing, I had staff look it up, the public hearing for the Touch-A-Truck was November 1st.
When did we vote on it?
November 1st.
Okay. And we wouldn't have known about the 6% increase.
Correct, because that letter came out 2 days after council voted on it.
Okay, so just to respond, I'm going to vote against this because I don't trust the county. I want to see a letter from Spartan. I agree with you, Mayor, that we're boxed into a corner, and it's something that we need. I agree with you, Mr. Lara, that we need to get some kind of apparatus fee into our developers for homes that are, that we can't service now without buying this truck, and businesses as well. But because I don't trust the county with the way this process went, and the fact that there might be a letter like this coming in the next day or two from Spartan, I'm not gonna vote to approve this until I see a letter like this from Spartan that says, because we're not gonna get it done in 30 days, no matter what happens. We're not gonna get our order in 30 days. And I wanna know what the total cost is gonna be. So if I get something from Spartan that says, you know, here's the total estimated proposal cost, and by the way, if you don't buy it now, in 30 days, we're gonna raise it another $100,000. That is what I need to see before I will vote to approve this item. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, one last comment. How high or how much is council willing to spend on a ladder truck?
Well, in my opinion, I mean, how can I put this? The price is what the price is. You know, you can't really, debate that. The price is 2.8, whatever it is. It's whether you want one or not. You know, and you try to find the better price that fits what they're looking for. But it's not like, oh, it's 2.8's too much. It's like, do you want the truck or do you not want the truck? And do you think the other stuff is gonna do what this is supposed to do? And are you jeopardizing any safety in the process? So, you know, nobody wants to pay $3, $4, $5 million for a truck, but the price is what price is. So, you know, and if we follow what they're asking and we look for the best that we can, then whatever that number is what the number is. And you either do it or you try to go a different route. And if you go a different route, then we need to ask the chief, well, we're gonna do this instead, so what are we gonna expect? What can we not expect? What kind of jeopardy are we gonna get into, blah, blah, blah. And then you talk about the surrounding areas. So, you know, yeah, you have Morongo, you have Mill Valley, you have possibly Calamasa. That's true, but, you know, our diligence is it's our area that's building as well. So we have to ask ourselves, if we're still approving logistics centers and we're still adding to the high schools and we're still doing things that we're doing as a community, how can we expect everybody else to come along and cover us if we're the ones doing that? So
I appreciate that, Mayor. I just, you know, this just doesn't.
I know, it's frustrating.
It feels, because it's at what point do you say this, I don't want to get extorted anymore for money?
Well, and that's why I like his idea about having a letter or some invoice, so we see the numbers and they go from there. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I think the city manager wanted to add something in really quick.
Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I wanted to make sure it's not what I'm
I
going to
was
say.
going to wait till the end, but
Okay.
I wanted to offer a suggestion. Since we already have the legal in, we are covered for a public hearing on the 16th. Would it be helpful if we were able to obtain that letter by the 16th or by the time the agenda was posted on Friday from Spartan, locking them in with any cost increases and whatnot in that letter?
That was going to be my motion exactly, or my substitute motion if someone else got a motion in before me. But that was what I was going to move for. Comments?
Yeah, I just have a couple comments. I think I get all emotional thinking about this stuff sometimes, I'm not going to lie. But I want to go back to Councilmember Lara's question about, you know, how much are we willing to pay? I think the true question is, what does a life cost? I think safety, which I think is what the mayor was going with. But I think that these apparatus that we're talking about really do impact lives and they impact safety. And I think that we all live in this community and can appreciate that. Now, I agree, this is frustrating. This is probably one of the most frustrating things to sit through because it just feels like you're being nickeled and dimed. But I do want to know a couple questions for the chief. Do we know a cost of the labor that's being added that the county is picking up? I also note that they're adding $250,000 in fire equipment based off of this letter that was received today. Is there anything else that the county is adding in to offset some of these costs that is new or different from the initial proposal?
not that's new from the additional proposal. There's the $250,000 to help outfit the truck. The bodies that they're gonna supply, I mean, that's between $650,000 and $750,000 a year that the county's gonna contribute to the city for 3 personnel. So that's a lot of money. That's 3 more bodies on, that's helping protect the city of Beaumont, and the resources here and the public here that you wouldn't get otherwise. Because if there's no truck, then the county's not gonna pay for any positions here. And that's kind of what I thought kind of one of the selling points originally was of the truck was you're gonna have to pay for 9 new positions at the new station regardless. You have an opportunity by making a purchase every 10 to 15 years of a apparatus truck for, $2.3 million and you get $650,000 to $750,000 of, I guess, labor per year that goes to the city. So, but other costs, no, I don't believe there's any other costs I can think of.
So if I'm looking at the 2.2 divided by, let's say, the 650,000, the cost is paid off for the entire purchase of the 2.2 in 3.38 years with just that addition of those 3 personnel. I also want to mention that thinking about it from a liability standpoint, we don't fund, we have no unfunded liability through CalPERS. So that's carried and just something to think about in the back of our head because the county carries that contract portion. I know that that's not talking about the truck per se, but with this decision that's being made here and the addition of those, some of that is unfunded liability that if we didn't have this contract, we don't have these agreements or these purchases here, that those could be potential liabilities that the city carries. It's just something to think about.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, just to respond to the PERS comment, we don't pay PERS on any of our fire, right?
PERS on our firefighters?
We do. The city of Beaumont does not.
No, we're part of the PERS system, but that's
But
all.
that's paid for by the county and they charge us $2 million or whatever a year for that.
So on the Exhibit A, the state, because we're state employees, we're not county employees. So that cost is just a direct pass-through on the Exhibit A of what the state personnel costs are.
Okay, but what I'm saying, that the argument that these are non-PERSable expenses, they're all non-PERSable expenses for us as far as personnel for fire department, correct?
I would say, yeah.
Okay. Last comment. I've missed many concerts and events for my kids, and on the 16th, my son is playing in a concert in Redlands, and my plan was to miss the meeting on the 16th. But if it's possible to start the meeting early and maybe have any closed session afterwards, I would like to be here for that. If it doesn't make that much of a difference between the 16th of May versus the first week in June, could you get back to us on that consideration? So I would like to be here for this discussion, but I'm not going to miss this last concert as a senior in high school.
That would be entirely up to the council.
And it'll depend on that letter too, so that's a lot to do with it. So let's see if the letter comes in and we'll see how we can work and go from there. Our only concern was that the youth council was right before it.
Well, this would be for the 16th. It would be a regular meeting.
Well, then, yeah, we can definitely adjust there.
We could, if
Oh,
council chooses, we
Sure.
could start at 6 and put closed session after and put that,
Can we start at 5 and put closed session afterward?
it says 6 o'clock.
We can adjust the notice, but
Okay.
can we do that outside of regular scheduled?
Well, that's right, this is the regulars.
I'll have to check and see if it has, oh, you know what? It does not have hours listed.
So we
It's
could
just the
start at
days.
5
Okay.
o'clock. We'll just change the notice.
Okay. So I'm ready to make a motion unless there's more discussion.
I think there's one more comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to jump in and just add a comment. From what I've learned from this whole process and being on the council is I'm learning more and more of regional efforts. And I understand that the county they quoted the wrong truck. I think of a pickup truck, we got quoted for an F-150, but we need a 350. And it's just different. And so I understand how this happened, not happy about the cost difference and so forth. But we have neighbors that are doing what they can to help us regionally and will help us with safety efforts, and that's Morongo and the new helicopter ambulance that they just purchased. That has a range of 150 miles to go rescue somebody if it's needed. And so if we have this collaborative effort, and we try to follow the guidelines that the county sets in terms of requirements for a truck, if what we got quoted doesn't meet those requirements, then I completely understand having to ante up and to purchase a truck that's going to meet our needs. I certainly support the idea of getting that quote and see if we can lock it in and get that order placed right away. But if we lost one of those revenue-generating warehouses, we would lose the confidence of them and maybe even future developers coming in the area, and the impact could be just enormous. And so I think it's really not, to me, it's not the difference in the money that we have to pay versus the peace of mind and the ability we have to protect the public. But I also do want to know what our cost's going to be. I don't want to approve 2.2 million and turn around, and just because we missed it by 30 days, it's 2.6, and it just never stops. So if there's a way to lock in that quote, that's great. And if I understand it correctly, well, that includes a discount with the ordering of another truck that the county's going to do, but the county will continue to purchase trucks again in the future.
Correct.
So if we were to miss a particular purchase, we could still piggyback on another future purchase, but it would just be subject to pricing at that time, correct?
Subject to pricing at that time, and it also means that you're without a truck that much longer in the city.
And if any truck that was borrowed, then as you pointed out, would be a 75-foot ladder.
That, as of now, that's the only trucks that we have that have a pump on them. All of our TDA trucks that we currently have in the county do not have pumps.
If you have a ladder without a pump, you need an engine with the pump to escort it to get the same work done, correct?
Correct, and we won't staff a station with only a truck company or only a squad because it doesn't have the ability to put out a fire.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
So, do you have a comment, or you can make a motion?
Make a motion.
All right, so do we need a motion? It's asking for direction. So would you like a motion to be stated, or just direction? Do you have the direction you need?
I would like the motion simply because of the public hearing.
Then let's hear what you have.
I will move that we bring this back to the May 16th City Council meeting, assuming that we receive some kind of letter similar to what the Rosenbauer letter is here from whoever it is that we're going to purchase the truck from, so we know exactly what we're approving. And I think that covers it all. I don't need to make a motion about the starting time of the meeting or anything like that. Okay, that's my motion.
I'll second.
All right.
Councilmember White?
I meant to add that even if we approved it tonight and we approve it on the 16th, it's not going to be any difference in the time that we actually order it, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
If we approve it tonight, since we have to do a CIP anyways, or we approve it on the 16th of May, there's no time difference in when we actually order the truck, correct?
We have to have the public hearing.
Okay, yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Thank you, Chief. All right, moving along. We're on H, legislative updates and discussion. Discussion on the proposed assembly bills, AB 1000 and AB 1748.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the time that this staff report was written, AB 1000 was still alive, and as of April 27th, it died in the Committee on Local Government, and so that bill will not likely see any future action. Although it is eligible for reconsideration, I don't anticipate that it will that it'll move any further. So that leaves us with AB 1748, which is proposed by Assemblymember Ramos. Just by way of background, I know we've talked about both of these before, but both of these are related to logistics projects and the spacing required between a logistics project and sensitive receptors. So the AB 1748, the Ramos bill, is specific to counties of Riverside and San Bernardino. The information and the proposal is based upon the lawsuit from the AG's office with the city of Fontana, where the 300-foot sensitive receptor buffer was agreed upon as a satisfactory remedy to the issue. So that bill includes that language, and by imposing that minimum setback of 300 feet, it also allows for cities to approve development of an expansion or a logistics use if it has a current good neighbor policy or sustainability ordinance or something like that. The city, as you're well aware, U5 adopted back in the fall the policy on land use and sensitive receptors, our plus policy, which I believe would qualify as meeting the criteria for this bill. So I will leave it at that. If council would like to support or oppose officially this bill, we can discuss that, or staff is happy to just keep watching it as it continues to move through the process. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Public comment? Anybody around?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have one caller on the line.
Oh, well, then we'll entertain that. I'll open up public comment at 8:11 p.m.
Go ahead and send them through. Rudy, are you able to send the caller through?
One moment.
Caller, can you hear us?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Council, this is Ron Roy. AB 1000 rightfully attempts to remove a city's police power over land use for warehouse projects over 100,000 square feet by setting a minimum 1,000-foot buffer between warehouses and nearby sensitive receptors. I support AB 1000 because it guarantees residents protections from unwanted warehouses that changing and too often unreliable city councils simply cannot give. Unfortunately, AB 1000 has been rejected by the Assembly Local Government Committee and replaced by an impotent, useless, also AB 1275, which I'm asking the council to oppose. Now in Beaumont, after approving over 10 million square feet of mega high cube warehouses, the city council has modified its approach to warehouses when it adopted PLUS, or Policy on Land Use and Sensitive Receptors, and they learned it's okay to say no to a warehouse project when they denied Beaumont Summit Station. Now, both Plus and the warehouse denial are clearly positive steps in stopping the warehouse invasion. However, the problem is, like AB 1000, Plus cannot apply to the two next big warehouse projects on Beaumont's horizon. Beaumont Point at almost 5 million square feet, and Legacy Highlands at over 30 million square feet. You're looking at 35 million new square feet, not covered under Plus. Now, both of these projects are outside of the enforceable parameters of Plus because they are farther away from sensitive receptor communities than 1,000 feet. Now, that doesn't mean that these projects are right. They're not. They're wrong for Beaumont. So what can the city do to stop these unwanted community scarring projects? I'm asking the city council to look for inspiration from two sources. First, our neighbor Calamasa. They're gathering signatures to place a ballot initiative on the next election that will ban all warehouses over 100,000 square feet within their city limits and spheres of influence. This would preclude warehouses anywhere in the city, regardless of their proximity to sensitive receptors. Second, the SOAR program in Ventura.
The call's still connected. Are you there, Mr. Roy? The call disconnected now.
Is at 2:03, this has got another minute, if you'd like.
Rudy, are you able to call him back, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
You let him know he's got a minute left. He comes back.
This is such a joke.
Mr. Roy, can you hear us?
Yeah, they didn't hear my presentation?
Yeah, yes, we heard almost all of it. You still have a minute on the clock.
Okay, so I got a minute. All right, let me go back here. So essentially, in a nutshell, AB 1000 and Plus are not going far enough because you have 35 million square feet of warehouses that are not going to be covered by these because they're too far away. And the people of Beaumont don't want them. You got, and we don't want to worry about whether you're in a good, bad mood, whether you approve or deny a warehouse. So what I want you to think about is to do a warehouse ban, do it like a referendum, you put the ordinance out there for a vote, or you go with the SOAR program where the people from now on vote whether we have development in our city. Okay, so a majority vote. SOAR is save open space and agricultural resources. We're just tired of, your fickle nature. We need a guarantee that we're going to have our land protected. So, and again, you just look at that discussion you had over the fire equipment. Look what warehouses are costing us. And that was unfunded to the tune of $3 to $5 million. Think if you had picked another land use where you wouldn't have needed those 100-foot ladders. It just goes on and on. So I don't know if my time's up, but give us the police power. Give the people the police power. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roy.
Yeah.
I didn't know he could hear me. I was there. All right, so we'll close public comment at 8:19 p.m. and open up to any comments from discussion. Mr. White, you have a comment?
I do. So basically, Cal City has reached out to cities in San Bernardino and Riverside to gather input from cities on these bills. We need to first go back to our legislative goals, and one of the primary goals was local control. So either one of these will take away local control. There is a conundrum because, first of all, we went through a very long and involved process to put together what I think is a very strong, good neighbor policy. It's one that some of us didn't agree to all parts of it, but we as a council had the local control to do that. 1748, I'm sorry, 12, what is it, 12, no.
It is 1748.
So
yeah.
1,000 was voted down in committee, 2-1, but it can come back in the next cycle easily. Another problem with both these bills, I don't know if 1,000 is the same. Is 1,000 San Bernardino Riverside exclusively?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So these bills were originally going to be statewide, but the argument of doing it statewide was the fact that there were some cities, big cities in the state of California, that could not live up to those numbers of 1,000 or even 300. Cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco and some of the more populated cities. And so, in our detriment, the state legislator had legislator, whatever, you know what I mean. People in Sacramento had decided, okay, this is one place where one size doesn't fit all. But how many times have we had to bow down to the one size fits all that were designed to help the big cities and to hurt the small cities like ours? So I personally would be against, I would oppose both of these bills because it takes away local control. And I think that's the most important piece of our legislation. I think it was probably number 1 or 2 on the list of our priorities. So regardless of the fact that AB 1000 sort of meets what our good neighbor policy was, I would vote against that as well, just because this is a decision that needs to be made locally. And whether it's made locally by a council that's voted in by the public, or if the public wants to put a referendum or an item on the ballot, there is a process for that to go forward. But at this point, I really think there's no reason for us to act in any way as far as telling Cal City yes or no on either of these items. That's my position on this.
Let me correct. AB 1000 is general, so it would apply statewide. 17's, the Ramos bill is specific language to Riverside and San Bernardino counties. But either way, yes, you're correct about the local control.
And one problem about opposing the one that is just Riverside and County and San Bernardino Riverside, or the problem with opposing 1748 is if they don't get that passed, then they come back with something worse. So that's why I'm really not in favor of even saying we oppose these, but I don't see as a council with our highest priority being local control, that we, at a minimum, we do not support these bills.
Councilmember Lara?
Yeah, no, Councilmember White, I think hit the nail on the head. However, I would like if with council's obviously support to bring this back as with a letter of opposition to 1748, because local control is very important. And even in the county of Riverside, we discussed in our WRCOG meeting yesterday that even in the county of Riverside, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Different areas, different cities within the county cannot afford this either. So I fully support local control, and I think a letter of opposition and to continue fighting this. I think it's going to be an uphill battle, but I think it's something that we need to come out and oppose every time they try to take local control away from us. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. From what I understand, Assemblymember Reyes is reaching out to Ramos to see if they can modify his bill. So your 1748 may not be what it looks like entirely, but anyway, nothing here, we're good. So, good. So my only concern is, you know, I don't want to be hypocritical because we have a legislative platform that we've developed, and you are correct. One of those major parts of the platform is to maintain our local control, and that's always where we've gone, and that's always where we've stood, regardless of whether it helps us or hurts us, or whether, you know, whatever the bill stands in any type of political, you know, paradigm. So purely based on the good for the city for local control, I agree that a letter of opposition probably would be the best approach. Personally, I would like to take a watch on it myself, just to see if it modifies or morphs. But, you know, if council wants the letter of opposition and we have a majority saying yes, then I'll of course sign that as your spokesperson.
So Mayor, before you spoke, I was of the position that maybe we monitor this, but after hearing what you said, I believe that it doesn't matter, they're not going to change it to a point where it's not taking away local control. No matter what changes they make, it's not going to, we're not going to maintain the local control we have. So no matter how good it gets, in my opinion, that we should, I agree, we should vote to oppose it. So I'll make a motion that we
Comment from.
and actually, all we're doing is letting Cal City know what our position is. We're not really doing a letter at this point, correct?
Well, Mr. Laura asked for a letter. Let's hear Councilmember Voight, and let's see where we want to go.
I was just going to support the letter.
Okay, so we have a letter for opposition.
Me
letter
too.
For opposition letter.
I'm good with
You're good with that? Okay.
So would you like this, it is in line with our legislative platform, so technically it doesn't have to come back. Staff can draft a letter for the mayor's signature, or if you would like it agendized so you can see the letter, I'm happy to do that.
I'm okay. As long as we're concentrating on the
Local control aspect.
Control legislative platform.
Loud and
That's
clear.
our position.
Yeah.
then I'm fine.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to letter I, economic development update.
Just a brief economic development update for you this evening. The regularly scheduled Economic Development Committee meeting for this month will be canceled. And in lieu of that, we are holding the first of the Downtown Beaumont Revitalization Plan Visioning Workshops. This will be held on Thursday, May 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. here at City Hall. I know there are some other events taking place that evening that council may be committed to, but I did want to let you know you're welcome to pop in and attend if you'd like. But the intent of this meeting really is to gather input and feedback from the community, from the business owners, from the residents, from the property owners. The consultant who's preparing the report, who we met at the last downtown business meeting that we had last month, will be there facilitating. There will be some stations set up with some hands-on activities for people to sort of model and play with possibilities for what downtown could look like. So again, that will be on Thursday, May 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. It will be here at City Hall. And invitations have gone out. We have started to receive RSVPs. I'm happy to answer any questions tonight or provide additional information later on if council so chooses or needs.
And that is the same night as the PD awards, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Questions from council? We're good?
My question was going to be, what's the other item? What time is the PD awards? 6:30.
to
And
8.
where's that?
Like last time.
Okay.
Okay. All right, with the, excuse me, Jay, city treasurer report?
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Letter K, city clerk report?
No, we're good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
L, city attorney report?
Yes, just briefly, just to update you on matters that my office is working on. We continue to work on the Illapatafe litigation. As you know, we prevailed in the state court action, but the federal court action is still pending. There have been some efforts at the request of one of the plaintiffs to try to resolve the matter. That hasn't been productive to date, has not been successful to date, but the effort has been made on the city's part. And then we have a lawsuit, Derrick versus the city of Beaumont, and that was a fall at the Cherry Festival and resulting in a broken arm, and so we're working on that matter. And then also the Nicholas Norman versus City of Beaumont, and this is a lawsuit involving a man that was in a car accident and then fled from the scene, and he filed the lawsuit, and that's being handled by Gene Ramirez's office, and that is ongoing. Hopefully that case will go away. And then Juan Cesares, this is a bike accident case, and we're defending that matter. And then also Paula Ann Wright, that's another bike accident case that was filed against the city, and we are in the discovery phase of that case. And then in addition to that, as you know, we settled the lawsuit against AIG, and that settlement is now complete. And then we have in Beaumont versus ULC and Torcal, we have oral argument in front of the appellate court this Friday at 9 a.m. before the Second District Court of Appeal. And so we'll be arguing that on behalf of the city, but we'll also be appearing and arguing on behalf of WRCOG. In addition to that, there are a number of claims. For a while, it seemed like I think we had one case. We had gotten it down to the point where we had one case, but we've had a lot more lawsuits filed and a lot more claims, and we're working with staff, your risk manager, on dealing with those claims. In addition to that, we've been working with staff on a proposed development agreement, assisting with potential property acquisition, assisting staff with contracting matters, also working on labor and employment matters, and assisting with a number of, with Public Records Act requests that are made from time to time. And then I worked last month on the amended and restated city manager contract, and then providing advice as requested on conflict of interest matters, and then other matters that we work on that I can't really go into that are privileged. And that's my report.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no questions from council, that leaves us to the city manager report, item M.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, tomorrow at 2:30 at Three Rings Ranch Park will be the ribbon cutting for the new playground that was funded with Prop 68 money. We scheduled this on a Wednesday purposely so that the school that gets out early the families can also participate. It's a beautiful, beautiful playground, so we're very excited about that. On May 10th at 6 p.m. here in room 4, the PD is hosting a required community meeting. AB 481 requires that we have a community meeting to discuss the department's use of specialized controlled equipment. Under that assembly bill, we're required to have this meeting, so we'll be hosting it. It's open to the public. On behalf of the city manager's office, I want to congratulate Officer Raylyn Navarez. She is your homeless liaison officer. Last week at the Law Enforcement Awards Committee dinner that some of us were not able to attend, she received the Excellence in Community Service Award. Police Explorer Destiny Jimenez is the recipient of a scholarship. She's a student in high school, and so she was awarded a scholarship. And then lastly, the entire Beaumont Police Department was awarded the collaborative critical incident recognition with 3 other agencies, the City of Fontana, RSO, and CHP, and that was because of the December incident where Deputy Cordero was murdered. And so our agency received several awards. We're very proud of the Beaumont Police Department, and unfortunately, I and some council members were not there, which leads me to, we had a very successful week in Washington, D.C., a lot of hard work. I can't speak for everybody, but I came back sore. A lot of walking, a lot of shaking hands, and there will be a full report on the May 16th agenda. I think that's it. That's all I have.
Any questions for the city manager? All right, thank you. Brings us to item N, future agenda items. Do we have anything that we want to review or suggest? Councilmember Lar?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to see if we could get an agenda item for processing fee waivers, like a checklist, if that's possible, to do that at a staff level, so that they don't have to come back to council. And then I'm not sure if this needs to be an agenda item, or if it's just something that we need to start doing is landscape enforcement on commercial centers. I keep driving by our new bus stop at Walmart, and it's, I don't believe the landscaping has been done there yet. And when you look at other commercial centers, it just seems like they've kind of let them go. So I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item or if that's just something we need to work on. I'm not sure.
Direct
So-
code enforcement.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember, would you like a report back on that, or?
Yes, please. That'd be great. Perfect. Thank you.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was gonna mention that to her on
No.
on the bus job, yeah.
See that Psychic
I
Friends
guess
Network that
so.
we're
I
doing,
noticed
huh?
it's like,
Paying off.
Councilmember White?
Actually, I was gonna bring that up too. Second Street.
Really? Oh, I was gonna say.
Second Street Marketplace is just, it looks like it's, I mean, other than the fact that every parking space is full in that place, the plants look like it's a deserted marketplace. But that was not the one. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that tracks.
We've heard twice today in two different issues. One was the fire truck, and the other issue was the legislative platform comments about the value of the logistics in Beaumont. And so I would like to see a report come back, and it can be in the the consent calendar. It tells us how many warehouse logistic jobs we have in Beaumont, what kind of revenue we're getting from property taxes for the different projects, and if we have any estimates on the ones that are currently under construction, that would be helpful as well. And then I don't know how much you can give us as far as sales tax revenue from the warehouses without getting into legal issues on that. So I would like to be able to know how valuable logistics is to Beaumont, and as well as understanding Mr. Lara, and actually we all brought up the fact that we'd love to see some kind of diff fee for, but I would like to know what we are benefiting from with these logistics centers. Are they contributing to infrastructure and things like that? So again, that can be an open or consent calendar item, and there's really no rush on that, but I think we need to understand that as we move forward with 30 million square foot? Yeah, okay.
Can I add to that and ask also where we are with logistics as far as what we have pulled on the permit and the sizes?
A status update, I
Status
guess,
update, yeah.
as well as a revenue report.
All right. Councilmember White?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree. I definitely like that as well. And kind of along those lines, if maybe we could get some type of public safety report out on the consent calendar, just as a quick check, calls, response times, types of calls, that may help us kind of get a bigger picture as well.
Those areas only
No, I'm sorry, not just to those areas, for the city.
for the city?
Mhm.
Okay.
And for police and fire?
Correct. Please.
All right, we're good, we're good, okay. Brings us to council reports, item O. Councilmember Voigt, would you like to go?
Sure, absolutely. Had a great time in DC. I'm excited to see the report out that comes with it. It was an excellent time that we had, and I really appreciated all the work that the staff put in to prepare themselves for that, as well as us. So just a big thank you, as well to Turch and Associates for really rolling out the red carpet and prepping us for those meetings and being our chauffeurs for the week. I think that they definitely were successful in what we needed.
Thank you. Councilmember White?
Yes, over the last 2 weeks, I've binge watched one network series, completed 3 other Netflix series, and I found 4 new ones on Hulu. So I'm making a lot of progress.
And watched our meeting as well on YouTube.
I did not
Thank
watch
you.
the meeting. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Lara?
Thank you, Mayor. Attended the WRCOG meeting yesterday. I didn't realize this. They have since 2005, they've had a good neighbor policy for sitting in new modified warehouses. There was some issues that had created because citizens would take that as the policy And so when cities try to modify distances other than what was in that, they'd get pushback from the citizens, even though they were just guidelines. So what we voted on yesterday was to go ahead and remove those guidelines. And so they'll go back to the TAC to discuss to see if they're needed. The other thing is that we did approve the fiscal year 23-24 agency budget for WRCOG. And also, I did bring up the AB 1748 and asked that we could bring that back to WRCOG and perhaps get a letter of, depending on how the executive committee feels, but my push was for a letter of opposition. So hopefully we can get some more traction on that. And then just briefly on the DC trip, you know, it's really impressive to watch our staff work, as well as the council members that we have. I think we're very fortunate and blessed to have the group that we have. Everybody's respectful of one another, very supportive, and we're all working in lockstep to move forward with the best city's interest at hand. So it was great to be a part of that. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On the 19th, I attended the Meritage Model Home Tour, so that was a nice event to be able to participate in. We had lots of members from staff, so I appreciate their support as well. On the 20th, I attended a Zoom meeting for a local veterans coalition, and then from that, I have an announcement to pass on. So a project of the Riverside County Veterans Advisory Committee and the Department of Veterans Services is hosting a legislative breakfast, and our guest speaker for that is going to be Senator Rosalisa Ochoa-Bogue. That will be held Friday morning, May 12th at 8 a.m. at the Farmhouse Restaurant in Banning. That's the red farmhouse that everybody's probably familiar with. So encourage attendance at that and look forward to hearing from Senator Bogue. I attended the DC trip as well, and it was very well organized. We met with many different departments with the federal government and our legislators and so forth, and so that'll be a nice report. And I appreciate the report that was previously done for Sacramento. It was very well written, and having attended both, I think it is something that the city should continue to do in the future. It's well worth the efforts, and we learned of the support that we have at the federal level. All agencies were very open, very excited to have us there, and very helpful in the processes of in terms of having to apply for grants and so forth. So very productive. And then just a comment, perhaps, and I know the Youth Council won't be meeting over the summer, but maybe a topic of discussion they can work on, and something we learned at DC and staff can help pass on, is some apprenticeship opportunities that go as low as age 16 and so forth. So perhaps we can task our youth council to work on that, and I'm sure staff will get additional information from those programs, can pass it through the council, but I think it would be a good idea that we can put our youngsters to use on that. So that's my report for the evening.
Thank you. So first, I want to apologize for my absence from the DC trip. Some of you might know that my father-in-law passed away, and it's been a difficult week, and I chose to stay close to family and close to the home. So plus my mind was a little out of it. So I do appreciate the staff. It sounded like a great trip. A lot done. Had full confidence in you, and it sounded like there was some great production. So thank you for that. But I wanted to mention that for public, just in case people wanted to know why Mayor didn't attend, and that was why. I did meet with a group of residents at Four Seasons. We discussed affordable housing, gave them a little update on city projects. I did attend Dutch Brothers opening. That went well. And a lot of excited people and a lot of excited high school students. So, so we welcome that and now hyper high school students. So we welcome them to our city and the new businesses that we have. And lastly, we attended RCA. So in the future report, we'll discuss on some of the issues happening with RCA. But we have a need for what we call a major amendment to the MSHCP. And there's a lot going on. Basically, what's happening is there's a part in there has to do with Hans developer process, in which they, if a developer has land and it is considered to be 100% conserved land, that the RCA needs to buy it from them. And the issue with that is going well until we get some pricey land. And when you get pricey land, you're required to buy it. And that's something that I don't think was really predicted when the plan was developed. And as such, has caused some budgetary issues ongoing. So they are in the process of studying the possibility of amending that plan, which is a total process in itself, years, money. So it's going to put us in a unique position to be in. So I'll give you an update on how that's going in the future. But that was a big major part of our discussion on how we want to keep the RCA going. But when you're paying out lots of money on land, it's difficult. So we'll talk more about that. But that is all I have at the moment. Question?
Species of the month?
No species. We
Oh,
haven't done
man,
species
come
in a
on.
while. This is, issue has been kind of overwhelming us, so right, that's kind of been our focus. Oh, sorry. Oh, I thought you wanted, next time I'll have a species. If not, I'll make one up. All right. With that, we'll adjourn. We're looking at 8:45. Thank you. I forgot to turn it off. Over.